Okay, just leave it a couple of seconds to make sure that we're all good here. And yes, okay, Dark Bleatings, everyone. We're here with another author interview today with Candace Nola. I'm very, very excited to have you here. For those the uninitiated, Candace is an award-winning author and editor, and also runs Uncomfortably Dark, which is a really great indie author resource. So welcome, hello, thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you.
Can we start off, because I know I'll get questions about this. Can you talk a little bit about Uncomfortably Dark and just tell people a bit more about what it is?
It is an indie horror review platform,
Mhm.
but it also has transitioned into a publishing house as of last winter
Yeah, so
for the indie world. So we do a little bit of everything now.
yeah, I've been wondering how on earth you have hours in the day, and I think I've just convinced myself that you have the superpower to freeze time because you
I
also write. I don't know
do.
how to do it.
Well, it takes a lot of work and I have a team now, so let's not act like it's just me. It's not just me. I do a lot of it, but without the review team that I have, I could not do 80% of what I now do without them running the indie review platform and running that whole team and running my Facebook groups and my media and all that stuff. Like they do a lot behind the scenes. So because of them, I can do some of my other stuff and kind of keep everything moving.
Hmm.
Mostly, some days I am overwhelmed and I freak out and I have panic attacks and days
Oh,
and
yeah, that's
but
very
you know,
familiar
it's
to
a
me.
lot. It can be a lot, and some days I need to learn how to say, no, you know what, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm already booked. Sorry.
Some days you just need to hide in a blanket and,
I've done that too. Yeah.
yep, decide the world doesn't exist until tomorrow. That's how I cope when I get a bit
Yeah.
overwhelmed with everything. Um,
I've had to do that too because, like it or not, I still need a break. And there are times that I just need to sit down and just not look at the screen and not think. And I feel terrible when I do because I'm always like, there's so much I need to do. But I wouldn't be any good to anyone if I completely shut down. So
yeah. Oh, I totally understand that. I feel guilty if the very I think I've only done it twice since I launched my website where I've had to close review requests because
mhm,
I'm inundated and
yeah.
I feel so guilty. I'm like typing that it's closed like sorry
Sorry.
sorry.
Well, I do close the website for reviews and promotional spots.
Mhm.
Everything is closed from November until the end of January every winter. And that is because we get backlogged. We work and we work and we work. And I think, the end of the year, it's holiday time, it's family time, I close everything down. The team takes a break. I take sort of a break, but usually what I'm doing is trying to catch up on all the arcs I still need to read and blurb. But we do take a break, and I have had that kind of written in there since the start of it. So like everyone knows now, and it's not a big surprise to anybody. So
Mhm.
and end of the year, we're closed. We pick up again first of the year. So
Yeah. Well, I think that's fair. 9 months out of the year, you're
yeah,
available, and then you have a little festive break is what I would call a 3 month festive
right,
break.
right. It works out.
How long has Uncomfortably Dark been running?
I launched the website in January of 2020, so officially about 4.5 years.
Wow. Well, it's gone from strength to strength this because that's only a few years really, but it's yeah, you're doing a lot with it now. So it's
Yeah.
yeah. How do you divide your hang on, let me rephrase. So when you're working on a writing project as well, how do you, sort of, divide up your time?
I schedule. a lot of it out,
Hmm.
hour by hour. It's scheduled out. Um, and I also work well under a lot of pressure. I
Hmm.
don't know why. I understand not everybody works like that, but I seem to.
Hmm.
So I kind of take things in chunks. So after I'm through with work, I take from like 5 to 6 as a break. And then after that, I will start an edit job for like an hour.
Hmm.
I'll switch to website stuff for an hour and a half. I'll switch to working on story for an hour and a half. I'll switch to another edit job for an hour. And I just continue that until about 10, 11 o'clock at night, every night. And then on the weekends, I do pretty much the same thing. But on the weekends, I tend to write more from like 5 a.m. until about 10. So I do like a large chunk of that, of my own stuff, really early in the morning on the weekends, and then I go back to my
Hmm.
schedule with all the other stuff. So I just constantly change hats.
Hmm.
And I also kind of feel like that helps me because I don't get overly burned out on one consistent job and just staring at the same thing for hours and hours and hours.
Hmm.
I do this one thing for like an hour and a half, and then I know, like, okay, I can look at this now. Like, I'm done with this. I'm gonna give that a break, and now I'm over here. So it helps me because I don't just get that. I'm just drained looking at the story. So now I can like switch.
Yeah, I do that a little bit sometimes. I do sort of like work hours, editing, writing, website stuff, similar to you.
Yeah, yeah,
And I find I'm more productive if I break it into time slots like that, and I just go
yeah,
back and forth. So-
yeah.
And also, being a vampire that doesn't need to sleep, that helps, you know.
Well, I don't sleep much.
Yeah. Um,
I sleep really late until really early. So usually between like midnight and 5, and then I'm up at like 5:15 most days. Not every single day, but most days.
I wish I had that discipline. I try to do that sometimes, and then when my alarm goes off, I just think, no.
No,
And then I oversleep and I'm like, oh no, I didn't even reach a happy medium.
damn it.
Excessively slept. Um, so in terms of your writing, I have Bishop
Bishop.
here.
Hmm.
Very interesting take for a way story because
Hmm.
people are very, very used to werewolves. Um,
Yes.
so it just show the cover a little bit more. So I don't think it's a spoiler to say because every people are always putting this on werewolf lists and going, not technically werewolf, but it should be included in the weird list. Um,
Yes.
what inspired the bear? I have to know.
Um, there were a couple of things,
Mhm.
but that story and the idea of it being a werebear
Mhm.
was actually inspired by a very, very old friend of mine from high school. And his nickname all through life and even up till now is Bear. That's what everybody called him. And we were having a chat one night about what was I going to work on next. And he was like, yeah, you should do this bear story. And he was like, no, you can make it a werebear. And I was like, a werebear, but it kind of stuck. And I was like, that's not half bad because everybody does like wear wolves and wear this and wear that, but I've not really seen a werebear done that much. So then it kind of stayed with me a while. The story itself, uh, the the title is actually named after him as well because that is actually his name.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that's where the title came from because it's his name. Um, And then I wanted to add some Native American lore in there because I'm half Native American as well. And I'm also kind of I have also been stuck on survival stories most of my life. So
Hmm.
there's a whole lot of that, like survivalist stuff in there, and the girl, and I just put a lot of things in there to just, I wanted it to be a survival story with a twist
Hmm.
because I needed it to have the action in there. I needed it to have the monster in there, but I really needed the girl to be like a capable young adult. I didn't want the usual damsel in distress that didn't know how to do anything.
Hmm.
And this girl like grew up on extreme sports. She's been hiking and skiing and fishing and swimming and doing all that since she was 5.
Hmm.
Like this was her life. So she's lost, yes, but she has a really good chance of surviving. But then you add in the extra twist with the monsters and the creatures and the so then it really turns into a race against time, but you also have the mystery of who is this man and what secret does he have, and it kind of unfolded in my head that way, and I just kind of wrote it like, I like this. See where it's
Yeah,
going.
it's my first way beer, I have to tell you, and um, I I was going to move on to the characters next. It made the book scarier for me because all the characters are so capable.
Hmm.
Because if you're reading a protagonist that's doing nothing but running and screaming, running and screaming, yes, if there are monsters, but
Sure.
people who are completely out of their element with the scenario. I think, well, yeah, of course they're doomed probably, but with a story like this where everyone's got great wilderness skills and outdoor
Hmm.
survival skills, and everyone knows, like the sort of like the smaller characters in this know the area and everything
Hmm.
as well. Like, it made it like that much worse when I like to the tension is what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pacing is really, really fast as well. I felt like I was like reading it as fast as the action was happening. If that makes
Yeah. I kind of wanted it to kind of to feel like an action film
Yeah.
more so than just like reading a story. Like I really wanted it to pull you in and just keep you there and just pull you along. I feel like it worked. I've heard that a lot, so I think it worked
Yes.
out.
It's an easy page turner because I thought when I read this a little while now, but I thought, oh, I'll just dip in and out of it like I usually do with books, and then the next thing I know I've read the entire thing. So I would so um yeah, it was really fun. I thought even the I'm sorry, I've forgotten the mum's name now, but even the mum with the
Aaron.
yeah, with the predicament she's in, you can tell that she's not some useless woman in the woods.
Yeah.
And even she is in grave danger. So yeah, it was a very fun twist on the sort of like weir tropes, and also I liked the other stuff you threw in there because you don't get to see that particular thing, which I will not spoil, but you don't get to see that much in horror compared to other monstrous things. So yeah, it was a real fun time. When you're putting your stories together, do you know like where you're going for the ending before you start writing, or like how much do you plot, if at all?
Mm, I don't really plot. I wing it most of the time. I get a general outline.
Hmm.
I usually get who was going to be in the story
Hmm.
and what's going to drive them before I get the actual story.
Hmm.
Like when I'm working on it, because I do most of it in my head. I don't really jot down notes and outline things and do all that. I just kind of let it marinate back there in the background. So I usually get like the story. I get my characters first,
Hmm.
and then I kind of get a feel for who they are, what they're into, what they're capable of, and then somewhere along the lines, I'll get my plot as to okay, is this going to be monsters? Is this going to be a slasher? Is this going to be, and then it's what's my twist though? Like what makes it stand out from the normal? monster
Hmm.
story or slasher story. Like, how can I make this mine, not just here's another slasher? So I usually get like my twist and then I'll start to write it.
Hmm.
And then from there, it's pretty much whatever happens as I'm writing it happens because at some point the story tends to write itself. So I just let it.
Yeah.
There's been times where I have one ending in mind, but then it changes halfway through because my character's like, we're going to do this instead. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that works too. So I just kind of see what happens. So I don't really stick real strictly to any sort of plot line. I have like a loose one. And then however it unfolds when I write it, I usually just let it.
Hmm. Do
So.
you do you know in advance, like do you aim for a certain length for your stories, or do you just start and then just let it be whatever length it feels natural to end on?
I usually let them end wherever the natural conclusion is, unless I'm purposely writing a short story for an antho or a
Mhm.
collection, something along those lines. But other than that, my own work, they tend to go back and forth between the novella length and the novel length.
Mhm.
It just depends on where it ends is where it ends, and I'm happy with that. Like I don't care if it's a novella or if it's a novel because I feel like the story is going to write what the story needs, and when it ends, it ends.
Yeah.
If it ends a lot sooner than I expected, I'm okay with that. And I don't try to make it longer just for the sake of it being longer because sometimes that can hurt it as well. Like, I don't want to add a lot of excess stuff in there that doesn't need to be in there.
Mhm.
So, you know, when it ends, it ends. And hey, here's a book, here's a story for you.
I actually think that's one of the biggest joys of indie publishing, as opposed to mainstream publishing, because I feel like there are more set like parameters for word count and stuff with mainstream publishing. Like,
Mm,
you wouldn't see a lot of books this length from
yeah,
like one of the big five or something, because for whatever reason they seem to think that people don't enjoy books this length, which
yeah.
is insane to me because I must have 1,000. Like, this is like the perfect one for me because I like to read a lot, and if possible, I like to read books in one sitting.
Mm,
It's kind of hard to do if it's a 600 page novel.
yeah, yeah, unless you have all day to spare.
Um, so as far as launching your press with Uncomfortably Dark, what are some things that have that you've learned about like that side of things that might surprise other people?
Don't do it. If you like having any type of life whatsoever, don't do it.
Yes,
Being
that's the
honest.
main lesson.
It's yeah, it's so I didn't think it was going to be easy.
Yeah.
I already knew it wouldn't, and I already knew like how much work I put into the website and my own stuff and the anthologies that I do and all of that. But then my co-author for Bishop 2 had this brilliant story that he was trying to put out into the world. And I was lucky enough to read it as it was being written, and it's a masterpiece of a story. It truly is. And I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited with him and I waited with him, and he got this passed over and passed over and passed over. And I was like, it needs to be out. Like, this needs to be seen. And I was thinking about it and I was thinking about it and I was like, well, if I do this, I'm
Mhm.
going to have to full blown, like, I'm going to have to become a legit publisher if I put this one story out. And he was like, well, let's give it a few more months and see. And then if no one wants it, then it's yours and you can do what you want. And I was like, okay. So I talked to a few of my friends in the publishing world and I got a lot of advice and a lot of help. And a lot of folks were kind enough to say, okay, you need to do this, you need to have this, you need to get this done, you need like I got a lot of help. And I ended up publishing his novel last September, and it's starting to do very, very, very well. His launch went great. Um, so after that, I had talked to some other friends of mine that would be willing to sign with me and go through the learning pains with me without, trying to light me on fire online and be like, she has no idea what she's doing. And I was like, listen, I want to do this. I'm going to give it everything I have, but I need some folks at first that know me, that are willing to work with the learning curves and things, because you're going to have that. Your first year or even two, there's going to be snags, and you're going to have to learn like all the right steps and how much time you really need to do things and all of that. So I found a nice little group of folks. I asked them, like, would you be interested in maybe publishing with me? And like, this is the deal. I'm being very realistic with you. I can't promise you anything, but this is what I want to do. And a couple of folks were like, you know what? Yeah, like it's all yours. Here you go. And we started last winter officially as a publishing house. And I have uh, 6 signed authors right now. And we've done, I think, 7 releases so far this year. We launched a poetry imprint in last week, July 21st. We launched those, and the one novel, the one poetry collection debuted at #1 on Amazon like the
That's
first day it
amazing.
launched. And then they're both in the top 10 on the God, Godless platform as well, which is really cool when you're talking about poetry collections. So
Yeah.
we were really happy with that. Um, and then I have one more release coming out in September for one of my signed authors as well. It'll be his first one, so he's very excited about that. His arcs are making their way out into the world this week, and then that will wrap up the official release schedule for this year. But there are a few things that we're going to launch after that. Some things that have gone out of print that some of my signed authors have, because those publishers closed down or whatever, and we want to put their stuff out. So we'll probably do some smaller, like quiet releases of those over the winter. But our last official one will be September 21st.
Mhm.
And then we open for submissions in November, and then I'll be scheduling for both 25 and 26. So
Mhm.
we'll see how that goes.
So busy. Um,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing though. And a testament to your work ethic and your love of books, because I think a lot of things that no, one of the things that a lot of readers don't realize is that nobody launches an indie press, with bags of cash or like expecting to make loads of money, because there are so many costs, like not least of all your time that you're putting into it. I don't think that people realize that with all those elements where you've got cover design, formatting, or proofreading, like all of this stuff, it takes so long. And
Yeah.
you need artistic people on board with you that you might not necessarily be able to just pay up front because you
Right.
haven't made any money yet when you're first launching. So yeah, it's an incredible amount of work that you've done on top of being an author yourself as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be a new tagline, is like Candace, hardest working person in horror.
I've been called that quite a few times over the last like 2 or 3 years. Like, there's a lot of folks that have started referring to me as the hardest working woman in horror. And I'm like, no, I just really like what I do.
Yeah, well, hardest working person, I'd say. Just I mean, that's that's an incredible amount of work. I write and I run a website, and I try to make regular YouTube videos, and
Mhm.
usually that's the bit I fall down on, because I just like with a full-time job as well. I really do not
Right.
have I always I try and schedule things like you, like in blocks of hours, but if something happens that puts my plan awry, I the stress spiral begins
I'm
because
like, oh no, what do I do?
like I can't snatch those hours back every from anywhere because they don't exist. So yeah, you must be super organized.
Um, no, no, I'm usually a mess. I have whiteboards everywhere in this room. There's one leaning beside me on a bookcase. There's one on the wall behind me over here.
Me
I
too.
have giant post-it note ones like all on this wall. You can see one right here, like waving around. Um, and I have help. Like I have the review
Mm.
team, like I said. But okay, so for instance, this past weekend or this past weekend, I was still recovering from a convention and I came right back home from like the road trip and all of that. And I went right back to work the very next day and I work home at home part-time and I work in the office part-time. So I'm like driving back and forth. I'm downtown all day working. I come home. My house is a wreck because I've been gone for a week and now I have all these clothes from being gone for a week and I have books everywhere and all this stuff to do. And I just got really overwhelmed because I'm like, okay, I have these edit jobs to do. I have all these hardcovers I need to package. I have all this stuff I need to do. So I called my kids, like any good parent would do, and be like, "You guys remember to help me?" Because I was like crying and having a panic attack. And I was like, I just couldn't handle looking at my house the way it was anymore and looking at everything else I had to do. I have a routine, and with me being away for a longer period of time than normally, it was just like overwhelming because I just felt like all out of whack and just off track.
Mhm.
So my kids came over this weekend and they helped me get the laundry done, and we got the whole house clean. We got all the hardcovers packed, and we got everything put away and organized again. And I could breathe again. It's just there are days where you just can't help how things end up, and when you need help you just have to ask. I don't usually like to ask, but my kids, they live close by, they're grown adults and they're very supportive of what I do, so they never give me a hard time when I'm always like, okay, somebody needs to come and help me, like I need to get this done, and if you do that I can do this. And one of them just appears and I have the help that I need.
Need to put the
So
bat signal up sometimes.
usually I'm like, someone come help me. I call my mom some days, like, can you just come feed me? Like, I don't know what else to do. Hey, it works out though.
The complete day ruiner for me that it'll throw my schedule off for like a week is I get migraines and
Mm,
it's sometimes if I catch them in time, I've got medication. If I take it in time, it nips it in the bud, and as long as I
yeah,
just stay off my screen for a few hours, I'm okay. But it's hard to tell the difference between that and a normal headache sometimes. And then
yeah,
the next thing I know, I'm like, I have to lie in the dark and close my eyes, and I can't do anything at all.
yeah.
It's the worst.
Yeah, I have that. I have issues with my spine.
Mhm.
So I've been having them most of my life since I was like 24. But there's no warning signs. There's no red flags. There's nothing to tell me in advance that it's going to be a bad day.
Mhm.
Like I could be walking around perfectly fine and then my back will just lock up. And I literally cannot move for the next hour, for the next week, for the next month. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no time frame. There's no, this is how it's going to be until it's just not.
Mhm.
And those days, yeah, I literally cannot do anything. I cannot stand up. I cannot type. I can't write. The pain is just everything. And my kids come over, they handle the rest, and the business has to wait. And I post online. I'm like, hey guys, sorry, but and there's nothing I can do because I can't sit upright to even be online or any of that. It's just
Oh,
I'm down for a day, a week, or a month. It's the
oh,
way.
Candace, I do.
It's awful.
We have some really weird things in common because I also have a spine thing,
Mhm.
and it doesn't get me for like a week, maybe a day. But I know what you mean. Like I was brushing my teeth once, and then all of a sudden, like my shoulder was like I don't know, froze or something, and it was so dramatic. I was
Yeah,
I just started like, yeah. My husband came up and I was on the floor of the bathroom with my toothbrush, and he was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Can't do words, too painful right now. Help!" And he's like,
yeah.
"What do I do?" And I was like, "I don't know."
It's nothing you can do. Just put me somewhere comfy and give me a blanket. Like,
Yeah,
there's
hit me
not
with
much
a
you can
mallet.
do.
Just knock me out until it's over. Just,
Yeah,
yeah, you have to look after yourself when you're having days like that for sure, because there's literally nothing you can do about that. So it's
exactly.
yeah, that's completely out of your control. Um, get up. I'm so sorry.
All good.
Right. Yes. If anyone hears the pitiful cries of my cat, he's fine. Just very chatty. Um, cool. So, if we can move on to, I would like to know what you care about when you're writing, like maybe thematically or like emotionally, um, as a general, and what you care about when you're looking at submitted work for your press that you're going to publish.
What do I care about? Um, I don't know. How do I answer that? For my own work, and I think as well as for any work that I would want to look at for my press is just going to be a very well written story.
Mhm,
Um, that's all I really try to do, no matter what type of story I'm attempting,
mhm,
whether it's an extreme story or a splatterpunk or a bizarro story like the Unicorn Killer. I just try to tell a well-written story that entertains and or makes the reader feel what I want them to feel.
mhm,
I think it'll change based on the story. So for something as wild and bizarre as the Killer, just because I like that story, I want you to laugh. I mean, there's nothing more to that story than making someone laugh and just visualizing this utterly ridiculous situation. But some of my other works, I want them to feel certain things like pain, grief, heartache, loss, fear, but I want them to sort of remove themselves from their own lives and be so immersed in that story that they feel what the people in the story itself feel.
mhm,
And I want them to come out of it with a sense of they understood what I wanted them to feel. I don't know if I'm explaining that right. So I have a story called Desperate Wishes.
mhm,
It is a post-apocalyptic story set in a not too distant future where women basically become objects. They
mhm,
are owned. They are stripped of everything, including their names. They're literally called the nameless.
mhm,
They're nothing except an object to be used. And that story obviously has a lot of themes in there that are intended to make you think, and they're intended to make the reader feel something for these women in the story that are being treated like this. But I also want them to identify with someone in the story. I think because if you read it, you yourself or someone you know has gone through an experience like the ones in the story
mhm,
that you can relate to. And ultimately, you're going to find yourself rooting for someone to come out of this okay in the end.
mhm,
And I also want that person okay at the end to be my reader.
mhm,
So if the person reading it has had some traumatic experiences, such as described in the book, and there are very graphic, extreme situations in the book, I want them to maybe regain a little of themselves as they read it. I
Mhm.
want them to be able to process what they felt, what they went through in a safe way, in a safe space. Give them someone to cheer for, give them someone, and by someone I also mean themselves.
Mhm.
Give them something to cheer for and to root for to come out okay at the other end. And at the end of it, I want them to put the book down and be like, I survived too.
Mhm.
That was me, and I got through it, and I'm still here, and I'm doing this, and like I think everything that I write, how I want the story to make the person feel, will change from every story. But I think at the end of the day, I want it to help,
Mhm.
and even if it's a comedic story, maybe the person reading it just had a bad day and they needed a laugh. So at the end of the day, if they read the story and they put it down and they laughed and they had a smile on their face, and it kind of made their bad day end up somewhat okay, then I'm happy with that because I achieved what I wanted it to achieve, I guess. It got really dark in here. Does that help? No,
It
that's a
yeah.
little bright for a second. There we go. How about a little bit of light?
Um,
I don't know where my light went.
yeah, it was slowly darkening as you were talking.
Hmm.
I was
Have a ghost. I don't know.
um one of so stories, especially in a short story, especially in anthologies, I always latch on to stories where even if the tone of the story is sad or something, if it makes me feel connected to the character or author, even better if it's the author for me for some reason.
Mhm.
Those are the stories that I really remember. And your story in The Perfectly Fine Neighborhood was, oh, like that wrenched me, but it was so um such a beautiful sort of that sounds a little weird to anyone who's read it, but I just felt it was such a beautiful exploration of grief because even though it's a universal experience, but it's also very
Mhm.
hard to put into words when you're writing, I think, because I've read so few stories that actually capture what it feels like. Um, and I didn't really have a question for that. I just wanted to tell you that I loved that story and I thought it was so special and I loved all of the so for anyone who doesn't know, I was one of the editors for that anthology, and
Mhm.
so I read a lot of submissions, and we Stephen and Wiley and I were deciding what went in there. Um but that yeah, the general, I think the general quality of the stories in that book was pretty good.
Yeah.
But yours was such a standout for me because of like the way that it made me feel. And yeah, I don't know, I just wanted to I just wanted to mention that to everyone because it was,
Okay.
yeah, it was just so heartfelt and like realistic even for a world like the Perfectly Fine Neighborhood.
Yeah. Um, I think you know this, but maybe not many people do, but that story was actually based on a true experience.
Mhm.
So like, it was written about the day that my own brother, well, and ended his life. And I heard it. I was the whole opening scene of the story was actually me. And I just sat down and I started to like describe like what I went through that day. And one of the things that I will never forget is the click that I heard. And that's actually where the title came from, is because while it wasn't the actual sound of the gun going off, for me, it was.
Mhm.
Because literally the moment I hung up the phone is the moment he pulled the trigger.
Mhm.
And that click it did something to like my soul. Like I
Mhm.
knew without a doubt what had happened. I knew it the moment I heard that click, and it kept like reverberating in my brain like the whole way out of my office. Like I was at work, so like the whole way out of my office, the whole way home, I kept hearing that sound just over and over and over, and it just consumed everything. Like it drowned everything else out. It was just like that click, and then I would replay like what happened, and then it was like that click again. But that's where the story came from, because it was just when you guys invited me to the amp, though, I had this whole other idea in mind, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And the more I sat down and tried to write it, the more I could hear that click. And my brother was like, you need to tell this.
Mhm.
Like I could hear him, and it was just like, I guess it's time. So
Mhm.
I sat down and I wrote that one instead, and it just poured out, and it was just the day that he died, and incorporated him into that world instead. And I chose to do that because whether you believe in the supernatural or not, he appeared to us that night. I felt him, I heard him, he spoke, he touched me, he sat down on the edge of the bed. The bed like went in. He was a very large, six, like, 6'3", 300 pounds. Like the bed creaked and went in. He appeared to me, my mom and dad, my brother, my kids for the next 10 years at my mom and dad's house. We had multiple experiences with seeing him. We have pictures of him. For me, that story was real. Like he
Mhm.
came back, and it was just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna tell this story and no one's gonna believe me. But hey, it happened for us, and we all know it happened. But
Well,
you know,
I mean, there are so many things that can't be explained because, like, I'm someone who always says, like, I do not believe in anything supernatural. However, I went through a loss like about 15 years ago now. It was my friend and we lived together. There were a few of us, and we had a no smoking in the house rule. And he would smoke in the kitchen by the back door, and then if he heard one of us coming, he would like dart outside as if he'd been in the garden the entire time, but we would know because we could smell the cigarettes.
right,
And it was just like it was like a funny thing where, like, if one of us was coming down the stairs, we smelled it, we'd start running to try and catch him.
right,
He always beat us outside. And then after he passed, one of my other housemates and I were on the way down the stairs, and we smelled the cigarettes, like they were being smoked like right then. So it was like, yeah, it was like such a strange. And obviously, like we went running downstairs. We weren't expecting to see him, but it was just such a. And then the smell
yeah,
kind of just like went away. But yeah, I can't explain something like that. It's unless we were having some sort of shade smell hallucination or something. But it's yeah, so strange things happen, and that's yeah. Like, thank you for sharing something so personal to you in that story, because I think you know that kind of stuff. I think we all really struggle if we lose someone, like in traumatic circumstances especially, and reading something that's that authentic, like actually it was like a healing experience. It was I always talk about kinship when I read certain types of stories, especially when they're written by other women. I usually, like, I'll feel bonded to the author or something and just think, oh
yeah,
yeah, like I kind of, like, I know how that feels, kind of, or
yeah.
whatever. So very, very brave of you to pour something so personal into a piece of art that you're going to share with everyone. Um, but yeah, it's a beautiful piece, really, really beautiful piece of writing, and I love
Thank you.
it. So hang on, sorry, I got so thing into that. Then I was like, I did want to go. So anyway, on to
Anyway,
another question. Um, yes. In your own sort of fiction tastes, what kind of stories do you enjoy reading or watching?
Mm, I enjoy survival stories more than anything. Don't know why.
Hmm.
Even a slasher story, but it's being done like outside in the woods where there's a whole like nature plays a part and it's like you can hide, you could escape, but are you going to? And what else is gonna happen? Those are probably my favorite ones. The zombie stories were my favorite for a long, long time. And then I got tired of them for a while, and then I got back into them a few years ago. I like action films a whole lot. I like horror films. Horror films and stories. My absolute favorite, though, are probably like demonic ones,
Yeah.
demonic possession, and or the haunted house,
Hmm.
or a house possessed by.
Even better, yeah. Mitch.
Like those are probably like my top. This would be the haunted house and or demonic possession sort of story, the survival story, and then zombies would still be like third.
Mhm. Yeah, I love zombies. I know people get very tired of them, but I don't know, they're just forever a classic to me.
Yeah, and I'm enjoying the new zombie now, the fast ones.
Yeah,
That's
me too.
horrifying. It's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying.
This
Like
is
the
scary.
old ones are great, but you got all the time in the world. They're just shambling along. You can't escape that. I don't know what to tell you. But these fast ones, this whole idea of them, yeah, that's horrifying. Love
Yeah,
it. So I'm
I,
having fun with that one.
I think we all have our zombie apocalypse survival plans, but if it's
Oh
running
yeah.
zombies, we're doomed. I mean, unless you happen to be on a cruise and you're in the middle of the sea when it's all happening on land, I don't think that you can really like the
Eh,
28 days later style zombies.
yeah.
Oh, they'll get you.
I'm gonna get you eventually. Yeah.
Do you actually get scared when you're reading? I'm a bit desensitized in horror fiction, so it's a tall order.
Very rarely nowadays.
Mm.
Very rarely. I definitely don't get scared by many movies, and I'll say many
Hmm.
because there's still a couple that leave me greatly disturbed.
Hmm.
Um, Stories, it takes a lot, only because I think now that I write and edit and publish, and I have that more critical eye on what I'm reading.
Hmm.
And I hate this, but everything I read now, I'm almost reading it through that critical scope rather than just as a reader being immersed in a story. And it kind of upsets me at times because I'm like, I used to love reading so much, but now it's like I can't just lose myself in a story
Hmm.
because that part of my brain doesn't turn off now. I'm always like, oh, well, they could have done this, or hey, they could have done this, or I'm like recognizing different structures, or I don't know. It's just so what I've started to do now is I listen to a lot of audiobooks during my day job
Hmm.
because I can kind of zone out and listen to the story while I'm working on whatever I'm working on. And if it's a really quiet day at work, I have been known to get scared and jumpy whenever someone comes up to me at work because I'm like so immersed in the story. And I'm like, oh, what? So, like, that has helped alleviate some of that because I'm not actually looking at the words itself, it's being told to me. And I don't know what the difference is as far as with that whole critical lens, but for me, it lets me get back into just the story rather than the critical side of looking at it.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's just because you've got like you can't really take your editor hat off.
I,
So
I
you're
I think
looking at
that's what it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be looking at it like, oh, could have put a comma there instead of a yeah.
Yeah. Someone was like, okay. And so
Yeah.
I listen to a lot now. So
Mhm.
that has helped. I think the last movie that truly disturbed me was The Autopsy of Jane Doe. And I will continue talking about this movie for another 15 years. I absolutely loved that movie when it got to the one part where you finally understand what is happening.
So
That
good.
disturbed me so much, and it was so great. And I was like,
Yeah,
that whole gut punch of what is happening. Loved it. Just loved it. I had chills once it finally hit me of what was happening in in that movie.
yeah,
So I look for things like that now, like when it can sneak up on me and I'm not expecting it, and it's so well done like that. Yeah, that one left me very disturbed.
yeah. I'm with you on that one. That one I was quite scared, and that film is only annoying because it's like easily one of the best films of that subgenre, but you can't
Mhm.
tell people what the subgenre is because it's a spoiler. And
Right,
I always got to
right.
like put it on a list, like my top 10, whatever movies.
Yeah, it was my favorite. Like,
Can't
just
because
just watch it.
yeah, just everyone just trust me. Just just take my word for it.
Just
Yeah,
have to
I
watch it.
it's I'm with you on the I see I did an MA in script writing, and one of our classes was story construction. So
Mhm.
and because of that, now whenever I watch something, I can like I'm looking for the setup. So now I keep seeing where things are heading, and like that ruined films for me for a while. But that one,
Yeah.
I was sat there trying to work it out, and I was like, oh, I really don't know. I really don't know. So I appreciate anything that can surprise me um like
I
that.
I started watching movies with that whole editor hat on as well, like maybe about a year and a half ago. I don't know when it started. It just clicked with me one day, and I was watching this movie, and my stepson was here with me, and I was explaining it, like explaining the structure of the movie to him, like, oh, this is just they're gonna do this next, and this is the part where they, and I'm explaining it, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to do this with every movie I watch now too. Like it's bad enough I'm doing it with the books, but no, no.
Well,
I suppose it's just a way of life now. Like I have to kind of make myself turn it off sometimes and just watch it. So I've been trying.
I have been unsuccessful in turning it off, but I do now really appreciate like a great setup more than I used to because now
Yeah.
I realize how difficult it is to write a setup that is like actually set up that
Mhm.
people can't just like catch like straight away. So
Yeah.
um,
There was a movie on I think it's still on. There's a movie on Netflix called Stranger in the Woods, The Stranger in the Woods. It was very well done. And I kept trying to predict who the bad guy was gonna be. It was dead wrong. Completely wrong. But the misdirection in the movie was so phenomenal. Like it was like a neon blinking sign over this guy's head. He is the killer. He's the killer. And he was not. He was absolutely not. But the whole time in the movie, you're thinking, yeah, it's him. Yeah, it's him. And even though you're telling yourself, no, that's too easy, it's not. The whole movie was just, but then well, could it be her? Could it be her? And they would like ease in these other little misdirection cues to where by the end of it, you were suspecting everybody except the guy it was. Just, I thought it was great. I was like, I did not see that coming at all. I liked it a lot because I like to be wrong. Like I hate when I can watch a movie and I just can predict every single step of it. It just gets old, even though there's a lot of them that are still fun and still enjoyable. I'd like to be wrong sometimes. Like I love it when I'm just completely wrong at the end. And that movie was so well done. I was like, no idea it was that guy. I
yeah,
told
I
my mom,
love
like, you
that.
gotta watch this movie. It was great. She's like, okay.
Yeah, I love it when like if a movie ends and I'm like,
Right?
oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know.
No idea it was that guy. Yeah. It
Do
was
you
fun.
have any sort of like most hated tropes in horror? Like things that get on your nerves?
Yeah. The damsel in distress just is old now. And again, with that whole critical lens, looking at it now and looking at the way the world is now and how things have changed and evolved and that, I just think it's just been overdone and overused. And I do think we're capable of so much more now.
Hmm. Yeah,
The motivating factor for every female that overcomes anything should not just be this one act. It shouldn't
yeah.
always be an assault. It shouldn't always be this one thing. And it shouldn't always be the guy swooping in to rescue her
Hmm.
either. The damsel in distress, I think, bothers me more than anything because it's almost like, are we not capable of surviving on our own? Or even though whether it's that act or some other horrific act, is every single female out there just incapable of fighting back or like ever? It's
Yeah,
just like give us a little bit of hope and
it's
credit for
it's
what we have overcome, like historically and routinely and again and again and again. Like these are things that we overcome daily, like every
yeah.
single day, and we've been doing it throughout history. But in every movie or in every, that whole trope, it's just like, oh, but you can't. You need us. No, we don't.
It's it's it's
Not all the time.
it's about time
Yeah.
that trope died. I saw
Yeah.
Reese Witherspoon made a great speech once about the phrase, "What are we going to do now?" Uttered by every woman in every film where there's an emergency. And she was like, "Oh, if you haven't noticed it before, now that I've said it, trust me, you'll notice it." And she was saying that what? She was like, "Have any of you ever seen a mother not know what to do in an emergency?" She was like, if there's one person in a household where like a kid falls over and cuts themselves or something crazy happens, this she was like guaranteed it's the mum of the household that's like, right, problem solving mode. And
Right.
she said, whereas in films though that are usually written by men, it's like the dad snap to action. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the very next film I watched after I saw that speech was Critters, and that is an oldie and a goodie for me. I love Critters,
Hmm.
but the second they come rolling in, Dee Wallace is it is Dee Wallace, isn't it? No. Yes.
I think we
I
could
think
Google it.
it is.
I'm
Um,
horrible with names.
but she's straight off, she's like, what are we gonna do now? And I was like, oh
Oh,
no,
yeah.
Reese was right. She was gonna see it. I thought this woman made an 11-course breakfast 3 scenes ago by 7 a.m. I
Right.
thought, do you know what I mean? I was like, she knows how to like manage her stuff. Like, um, yeah, that I hate that trope, and I'm also personally sick of the some sort of horrible assault as an inciting incident every single time. I'm like,
I
oh,
mean,
come
it
on.
happens. I understand that, but I think it's just been used so much that it just makes me want to challenge the people that I work with now and that I mentor now. Like, give me something else.
Hmm.
There's so many other motivations for a female to fight back or for a female to be the final girl. Like,
Hmm.
put her child in danger, put her little purse dog in danger. Like, how many women are going to kill somebody over their dog, their baby? Or
Yeah,
give me
John Wick
something
did.
else. Like, but just as an example, but there's so many other things that women would fight for and fight back for and fight through
Mm.
than just that. Like, show me where your strengths are by giving me something else. Give me something new. Give me something to fight my way out of.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
something else that's relatable because male main characters get a whole host of reasons for whatever they're doing or for why they're the main character, whatever. So I do have a few of those stories that I've enjoyed,
Yeah.
but most of the time if I see it now, I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
not this again.
So I was asked this a very similar question at the Texas convention I was just at. And it was, are there any tropes that you are tired of? But then the question was also, or reading of.
Mm,
And it made me laugh because a few weeks ago I was reading an interview with somebody and I completely forget now who posted it or what it was, where it came from. But it basically was like, can everybody stop using and they let out a breath they didn't know they were holding? Like, the minute I said that, I said, you know what? And that's how I answered the question. I answered this I answered that que- question the same way I'm going to answer it now. The same night that I saw that post, I was listening to Stephen King's new collection, Look at Parker, and it was in there. It was
mm.
in there like within an hour of me starting the book, and they let out a breath they didn't know they were holding. And I was like, "Oh, Steve!" I
Yeah, the,
turned it off a minute because I was just laughing. Like it's true. Like we all use it, myself included in this. Like we all use it at some point in some story. And now that I saw that post, I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm seeing it,
yeah,
I'm hearing it in every story. I'm like, we gotta stop.
yeah.
We know we're holding our breath. And we know the characters holding their
There are
breath.
so many of those that for some reason they're like common sentences that loads of us use. Like,
Yeah, it's like we're trying to convey the fear and that they're trying to be quiet and tiptoe to see what the situation is. But I feel like we need to trust our readers a little bit more into them understanding that, of course, they're going to be holding their breath and being quiet. But it made me laugh so much because the same day I saw that post, I heard it in that Stephen King collection, and then I started seeing it in everything I read, and then I was reading something back that I had just written, and I used it, and I was like,
yeah,
oh my, it's everywhere, it's just everywhere. So
my
yeah, that was another one that I'm just like, okay, I'm not using that anymore. I'm gonna
yeah,
say
it's so funny once it's pointed out. My friend Justin
mm,
said, we were talking about this before, and he said that the one that annoys him when he's reading is they turned on their heel. And he was like, picture turning on your heel. He was like, do it right now. And he was like, it's ridiculous. He was like, people don't just
yeah.
suddenly go up onto their heels and spin around. And I was like, oh yeah. And I thought I wonder
Yeah.
how many times I've
It's
written
like
that.
I understand what they're trying to say, but if you actually tried,
Yeah, to physically do it, it's like, yeah. It's actually quite difficult if you
mm,
got to do it in
what are you
stages.
doing? Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
I have to bring this to a close, and this is normally the point in the author interview where I cannot believe I've forgotten to bring it into my office today, but regular watchers of these interviews will know that the last question I usually ask is if you know what this purple one-eyed monster is. So just pretend I'm holding a purple one-eyed monster, but someone has guessed it. So now, and I've only brought that up, Candace, because I have to, because people are gonna expect to see it. Um,
Okay.
yes, that has now been answered. The person has won a prize, and I sent the box off today. So the next one we're going with is, do you know what this is, Candace?
I know what that is. Huh. No, I don't.
Okay, anyone watching, this is the new thing now that's replacing the purple one-eyed monster. If you know what it is, let me know in the comments. There will be a prize. And yeah, I know that's ridiculous, but I brought this out as a joke once, Candace, and it turned into a thing, and that's how I've ended every single author interview.
That's okay.
Not the first one. Um, I just want to thank you so much again for doing this. I'm such a big fan of your work and the site, the press, and everything that you're doing. And I really think you're such a credit to the indie horror community. And yeah, there's so much for everyone to enjoy with all of the work you're doing. So I will be putting the links um for your author stuff, Uncomfortably Dark, and everything else we've talked about in the description for people to check out. Um,
All right.
is there anything you'd like to recommend? Anything new of yours or anything coming out from the press that you'd like to recommend before we go?
Oh, not from my press at the moment, but I do have Demons in My Bloodstream coming out from Dead Sky Publishing at the end of this month. This is my first collection out into the main world. So look for this. It is available on Amazon for pre-order right now, and I think anywhere else. Um, the press has a release coming out the end of September, and we did have a novella come out this afternoon by Nicholas Robinson called Have a Blast, which is a very short, very quick, extreme horror revenge story that is highly original. That's all I'm gonna say.
Ooh, intriguing. Okay, I will put the links for the pre-order links in the description also for those. And if anyone has any questions for Candace after this, put them in the YouTube comments and I will, ask and get you your answers. If Candace replies to me, of course.
Of course I will.
Yeah, if I haven't talked you out already here. um, but yes, for now then, we're going to say bye to everybody, and I'm just going to quickly look for the stop recording button because I always do this. I say bye and then just awkwardly faff around. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we're going to say bye to everybody and bleed.
Bye.